When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
So you guys like making choices in games? Like entering a dilemma in a game story and then making a decision that impacts that story?
Thank you.
Turns out it's a pretty fun concept for the player. And it's interesting to make these choices, as is something that movies or books can't successfully put into their stories, because video games are interactive, which allows the player to influence how the story turns out. Wow, what a neat feature, says video game developers. Let's put it in our games. And voila. Now there's a big genre of games with the purpose of giving players choices. It's fun to see how developers have taken advantage of this feature because it offers a new way to experience stories, and its use looks like it's not slowing down as this choice-based genre keeps growing and evolving. The only real problem I have with choice-based games is how major decisions are less impactful whenever the story is longer. Games like The Walking Dead, which have a very long story, can't have many major choices that create very different paths because too many very long, very different stories would exist, which would be a nightmare for developers to create. A game like the Stanley Parable, which is very short, has the ability to have many major choices that offer the player many very different paths to go down. I feel like choice-based games with shorter stories are more fun because you feel like you impact the story with every decision, and the fact that it's shorter encourages replayability. But now, so many games have recognized that they can give players choices to give players a feeling they had kind of a unique experience with the story. The issue I have with this is that so many games that are not recognized as choice-based games will put a single major choice at the very end of the game so that there are multiple endings, usually just 2. These games have linear stories, and if the climax of the game is a choice given to the player, the game sacrifices its ability to build up to a satisfying conclusion. It also doesn't help that many of these final choices are simply a good versus evil decision that seems to ask the player, are you good or evil?
It's too firmly conditioned in your mind that good, if you're good, you get good things happening. If you're evil, you get bad things.
So the vast majority of players are just going to choose the morally good ending anyway, making the 2 separate endings less meaningful. At least Arkham City presents this ridiculous 2-choice system as a gag, where when you have to decide whether to save Batman or get away with the money, if you do decide to run away with the money, the game would just slam you with the credits scene, basically saying you're a greedy idiot before it responds you until you finally decide to help. GTA 5 had a good campaign. I felt pretty immersed while playing it. You got to really look at how the unlikely trio grew to be a team, and then, oh, let's just throw in a weird, forced situation so we can give the player an option to kill a main character. Like, why is this an option? It feels so off with the rest of the story. And due to the developers creating this situation that gives you the option to do something incredibly stupid, the ending where you don't kill any of the main characters becomes a generic, happy ending where you just do the same standard jobs you've been doing the whole game, and then all 3 main characters gather by the sunset and go, yay, we did it.
Now we keep a low profile and get on with our lives as friends. Well, do I have a choice? No, not really.
Like, what if this happened in a game that doesn't offer a choice in the end? Like, The Last of Us is kind of known for its pretty dark ending. The main character is repeatedly shoved into increasingly darker and darker moral dilemmas throughout the story, and by the end he's killing hundreds of people who don't really deserve it. What if the game developers gave the player a choice not to kill everyone in sight? The ending wouldn't have the same effect. Wrapping it all up, many game developers just put player choice in their game because it's seen as an inherently good feature, when it's not always good. Slipping in one choice at the very end of the game whenever the player had no choices beforehand splits the story, meaning it's a lot harder to make 2 good conclusions that both still make sense with the rest of the story. I should say having a 2-choice ending for a game doesn't ruin it, as some of these games in these clips are actually some of my favorite games I've played. Whether because of their really fun gameplay or because they actually use the 2-choice ending system and both endings are still really good, it can happen. Just the usual way a game has a 2-choice ending is very limited story-wise, either offering a generic, morally good versus evil choice, or a choice that sacrifices build up to make a few forced endings that don't really make sense with the rest of the story. And that's all, folks. End of video. Never really done a video essay before, and I've never really seen this topic really talked about, so I decided, hey, best of both worlds, let's try this out. And this is the product of that. So thanks for watching, and that's it. Outro master.